If Kamala Harris had won instead of Donald Trump, how do you think the last 9 months would have unfolded differently for the United States? I guess it would be more or less a continuation of the Biden presidency. Democrats would be doing their usual crap. Nothing for the working class, everything for the wealthy. Tale as old as time. Until they start caring about average Americans, the Dems will struggle to win what should be a shoo-in election again. So I dislike Trump. But the last few decades, both Republicans and Democrats have been rigging the system for the wealthy and letting our country slip into a mess. I don't agree with Trump, but I do agree drastic changes need to happen in order for our country to correct itself. I don't believe what Trump is doing is the right way to do things. But I do hope most of the population will wake up. It's rich versus poor. U.S. farmers would be selling soybeans instead of their crop rotting unsold. I probably still wouldn't know who Pete Hegseth is. That would be nice, I miss it. The dollar wouldn't have lost 10% of its value because of senile tweets. Don't think ICE or the National Guard would be raiding cities. I also don't think we'd be bombing Venezuelan boats either. We'd probably be hearing arguments in the US versus Donald Trump right now. You would have had 9 months of Republicans screeching about the election being rigged and Harris being an illegitimate president and the need for a civil uprising. They will never accept the outcome of an election that goes against them ever again. Taiwan would be Chinese territory, the Israeli hostages would still be in captivity, and Iran would have a thriving nuclear weapons program. It feels like so much has happened in 9 months I can barely keep track anymore. Multiple now peaceful countries would still be at war. Gas prices would be much higher. The Israeli hostages would still be in a tunnel under a Gaza hospital. Taiwan might be at war with China. And Pinot Grigio deliveries to the White House would be at record levels. Harris would almost certainly not have. Decimated the EPA, decimated the National Park Service, decimated the CDC, decimated USAID, created irrational tariffs that have wrecked international shipping and sales, picked a fight with Canada, picked a fight with Denmark over Greenland, sent militarized thugs with no accountability to terrorize people in major US cities, caused almost every journalist who reports on the Pentagon to quit over loyalty oaths, given permission to Qatar to build an Air Force base in Montana because they gave her a fancy plane, appointed a secretary of HHS who thinks Tylenol causes autism. I am far from a Kamala Harris fangirl, but her administration would not have been nearly as reckless, vicious, hateful, and frankly, completely insane. Things would have trundled on pretty much the same as before, and that's how Trump got elected. People are desperate for change, and were pushed into the arms of someone promising radical change. The status quo was what Harris offered. Kamala could not put together a sentence that didn't sound like word salad. I'm an independent, and I don't think she was equipped to run the country. But let's talk about what wouldn't be there. There wouldn't be ICE terrorizing American citizens in the streets. There wouldn't be a dumb tariff war on the world. There wouldn't be an anti-vax lunatic dismantling the CDC. There wouldn't be a Department of War, just DOD, as it always has been. But we would still have the Epstein files. Media news would be on full blast complaining about Harris, whether her outfit or her laugh. She would have gone ahead with convincing Congress to add on to the ACA, put together some relief for first-time homebuyers, and added home care onto Medicare. She would also be signing in a lot of military funding like every president, no matter their political party. Just a guess. I would be at peace and have little to no interest in the ongoing politics and news in general. Instead, I am constantly having to keep up with every instance of this jerk destroying the laws of my country, fearful of when he is going to escalate to a full-blown military takeover of the country with martial law in place to control movements. So, peace versus anxiety and fear. Probably a lot of farmers wouldn't be losing their farms, and they would hate her. The US would be 100 times worse, just like when Biden ran the country. I'm glad she lost that race. I bought a replacement pump for my koi pond a few weeks ago. The pumps are already expensive, but this one cost about $100 more than I expected because it was shipped from overseas and was subject to tariffs. I don't love paying lots more in taxes, so Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos can pay less. The tone and direction of government would be more institutional, less overtly confrontational. Many executive overreaches would have been avoided. Domestic militarization would be non-existent or constrained. Climate, civil rights, and regulatory progress would advance further. Foreign policy would lean more toward coalition and diplomacy, and Republicans would carry a greater burden of obstruction. In other words, it would have been better and calmer. The problem wouldn't be the last 9 months. It would be 2026 and 2028. Trump is a symptom of something that's very wrong in America. Harris would have been like Biden, just delaying what's happening now. No trade wars, inflation rates would have continued to cool, probably a similar resolution to the Gaza conflict. That is, probably not one for very long. Ukraine would be on much better footing. And the best part? We could all largely ignore politics on any given day if we choose. Remember when Elon Musk said if Kamala gets elected, that he'd probably end up in jail? If nothing else, all the inspector generals investigating Elon and his companies would have finished their investigations. You know, the IG's fired right away by Doge, with the biggest case being run out of USAID. One of the first agencies the Trump administration attempted to dismantle is the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. While at first it was unclear why Musk and Doge had their sights set on eliminating an agency focused on foreign aid, recent reports have shed light on Musk's connection with USAID. In May 2024, the USAID Inspector General announced it was investigating USAID's relationship with Starlink, a subsidiary of SpaceX, which it had paid to provide internet services to Ukrainian civilians. While the details of the investigation are not public, there is evidence Russia had access to Starlink, which was not supposed to be possible. However, the investigation will likely be dropped as the Trump administration moves forward with shutting down USAID epi.org. No surprise Elon dipped after those loose ends were fully taken care of. Well, we'd see Trump in the news just as much, but we wouldn't see ICE slamming 15-year-old girls into the ground or dogs getting shot by ICE. Not much different. Redditors would be blaming all issues on Trump's first term. You'd have farmers making excellent profits and complaining how much better things would be under Trump. A lot of political norms would still hold, and a lot of formerly functional governmental organizations would still exist. International events are harder to guess about, but a lot of kids who died when their aid was suddenly cut off would probably still be alive. Who knows what would have happened with Ukraine and Gaza? No one. Farmers would still be complaining while cashing their socialist subsidy checks. Amazing how they hate handouts, unless it's their own welfare programs. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. It really helps. Subscribe for more, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one.